The federal courthouse in Boston was never where Karoline Leavitt expected to be fighting her most personal battle yet. As a prominent conservative commentator and former national spokeswoman for the Trump 2024 campaign, she was accustomed to weathering political storms in television studios and on social media platforms. But today found her standing in the cavernous Courtroom 7, her signature silver cross necklace, a cherished gift from her late grandmother, resting visibly against her navy blue blazer. The cross had been her constant companion through countless political battles, but now it had become the unexpected focal point of a constitutional showdown that would reveal far more than anyone anticipated. The tension in the room was palpable as Judge Harold Winslow, a stern jurist known for his inflexible adherence to courtroom protocol, peered down from his elevated bench. "Ms. Leavitt," he intoned, his voice carrying the weight of decades of judicial authority, "this court maintains strict standards of neutrality. You will remove that religious symbol immediately or face contempt charges." A ripple of murmurs spread through the packed gallery where reporters, drawn by Karoline's First Amendment challenge to a media gag order, leaned forward in their seats. Karoline stood perfectly still, her posture radiating the same unflappable composure that had made her a formidable presence on Fox News and CNN. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she responded, her clear voice carrying through the courtroom, "the First Amendment doesn't cease to exist at the courtroom door. This cross is not just jewelry, it's an expression of my deepest beliefs. I won't remove it." The judge's face darkened. Behind Karoline, her attorney Mark Reynolds rose quickly to his feet. "Your Honor, if I may." Winslow cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. "I've made my ruling clear, Counselor. Ms. Leavitt, this is your final warning. Remove the cross or face a $500 fine and possible detention for contempt of court." The courtroom held its breath. Karoline's fingers instinctively went to the cross, tracing its familiar contours as she had done countless times before, during difficult interviews, while preparing for high-stakes debates, and in quiet moments when she needed strength. The weight of the moment pressed down on her as she realized the standoff was about far more than just a piece of jewelry. "I'm sorry, Your Honor," she said firmly, squaring her shoulders. "My faith isn't something I can remove when it's inconvenient." Judge Winslow's gavel came down with a thunderous crack. "Bailiff, escort Ms. Leavitt to." The massive oak doors at the rear of the courtroom burst open with a resounding slam that echoed off the marble walls. Every head turned as a tall, imposing figure strode down the center aisle. The man moved with deliberate purpose, his long black overcoat swirling around him as he approached the bench. "Your Honor," the stranger interrupted in a voice that carried undeniable authority, "before you jail this woman for exercising her constitutional rights, I suggest you review Commonwealth v. Carter, 1873. His sharp features remained impassive as he tossed a yellowed legal document onto the bench. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Karoline exchanged a bewildered glance with her attorney. "Who is that?" Reynolds whispered. Judge Winslow's hands trembled slightly as he examined the ancient document. This statute was repealed decades ago," he stammered, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. The stranger's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Check the legislative record, Your Honor. The repeal never passed the state Senate. That law remains in full effect, and it specifically prohibits any court in this Commonwealth from restricting the display of religious symbols, particularly in this very courthouse." A gasp went through the gallery. Reporters scrambled to take notes as the stranger continued, his voice dropping to a tone only those nearest could hear. "And we both know why this courthouse has that particular protection, don't we, Judge Winslow?" At that moment, a frail, elderly woman rose from her seat in the back row. Her voice, though quiet, carried through the sudden silence. "He's telling the truth, Harold." The judge's head snapped up. "Aunt Clara, what are you doing here?" The old woman moved slowly forward, her cane tapping rhythmically against the marble floor. "You know why they rebuilt Courtroom 7 after 1954, she said, her aged eyes boring into her nephew's. "You know what happened to Elijah Carter." The name seemed to suck the air from the room. Karoline felt a chill run down her spine, though she didn't yet understand why. The stranger, who she now noticed had positioned himself strategically between her and the bailiffs, turned slightly to meet her gaze. "Elijah Carter was a Baptist preacher," he explained quietly. "Arrested in 1954 for refusing to remove his cross during his son's trial. He was found dead in his cell the next morning. The official report called it suicide." His eyes dropped meaningfully to Karoline's cross. "Sound familiar?" A visible shudder passed through Judge Winslow. To the astonishment of everyone present, the stern jurist suddenly stood and began removing his judicial robe. Beneath it, secured to his vest, gleamed a golden crucifix nearly identical in design to Karoline's. "Case dismissed," Winslow muttered, his voice barely audible. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. Through the tumult, Karoline kept her eyes locked on the mysterious stranger now making his way toward the exit. She pushed through the crowd after him. "Wait," she called, catching his arm as he reached the hallway. "Who are you? How did you know about that law?" The man turned, his piercing gaze assessing her. Up close, Karoline could see the faint scars that marred one side of his face, the weariness around his eyes that spoke of battles far beyond courtrooms. He reached into his coat and produced a simple business card bearing only a name, Nathaniel Graves, ESQ, and a phone number handwritten in what looked like red ink. "You want answers?" he said, his voice low. "Then ask yourself why Judge Winslow's aunt knew Elijah Carter, and why your cross bears the same markings as his." Karoline looked down at her necklace, really examining it for the first time. There, barely visible along the edges, were tiny, intricate symbols. Her grandmother's dying words suddenly echoed in her memory. "This isn't just jewelry, Karoline. It's a key. Keep it close." When she looked up, Graves was gone, vanished into the courthouse corridors as if he'd never been there at all. Back in the courtroom, Clara Winslow was deep in urgent conversation with her nephew. As Karoline watched from the doorway, she saw the elderly woman press something into the judge's hand, a small object that glinted gold in the fluorescent light. A bailiff hurried past, speaking urgently into his radio. "Yeah, tell the warden we got another Carter situation down here." Karoline's phone buzzed in her pocket. A breaking news alert from the Boston Globe archives. "Pastor dies in custody after courtroom defiance. Mysterious symbols on cross linked to secret society." The accompanying photograph showed Elijah Carter's cross, identical in every detail to hers. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just about religious freedom anymore. There was something much larger at play here, something that connected her family, the Winslows, and this mysterious Nathaniel Graves. And as she touched her cross again, Karoline realized with sudden clarity that her grandmother had known this day would come. The real question was, what happened next?